There are a number of things that cause and result in a deflationary downturn, like the last one we had was in the 1930s. I think we're about to enter another period similar to that. So what are the really major opportunities in the beef business? It's clear to me that we need to produce a lot more beef, and specifically a lot more ground beef, is what I'm talking about, with grass and forage. We need to do it cheaper, more economically, more efficiently than we have been doing up till now. And there are ways to do that, and I'm going to talk about some of those today. I'm really concerned about our country. And I can't help but just share a thought with you. We have a president at the present time, we have an administration, we have a government that is determined to put more and more people to ride the wagon and fewer people to pull the wagon.
These last 2 days have been some of the most inspiring in years for me. And part of the reason for that is that for me always to be able to go on to real farms like Ken's and Gabe's, to see what farmers have done on their own farms to creatively address issues and problems that all of us are facing, and to do that in ways that are specifically grounded in their own place. And here we have these two farms which are, literally a few miles from each other, and yet they have their own uniqueness. They have approached a lot of the same principles, in fact, learned from each other in those principles, but then to see how they applied them on their own farm has its own uniqueness. And to me, that was one of the more inspiring moments, because this is something I've believed in for a long time. And what we need to think about is not models, but beacons of light, which shine a light on a particular place about how to do something, and you learn from that to then apply that and shine the light in another place, which has its own uniqueness. Because every farm, and this is something I've learned from a number of people, every farm has its own uniqueness, partly because the farmer is unique, but also because the place is unique. And so I'm hoping that all of you, with the many inspiring things which have been presented here in the last 2 days, that you will take those home with you as a way of shining a beacon on your own place, and not as a way of copying exactly what somebody else is doing. I learned an important lesson from Václav Havel. When he became president of Czechoslovakia, and as we all know, Czechoslovakia was in a mess back then. And somebody apparently came up to him after he was elected president and said, "So are you optimistic that you can do something about this?" And he apparently responded by saying, "No, I'm not optimistic, because optimism doesn't help you. Because if you're an optimist, you figure, well, it's going to turn out okay, and then you don't do anything, and that's the problem." And then he said, pessimism is the same problem. If you're a pessimist, you figure it's all going to go to hell anyway, so there's nothing I can do, and so you don't do anything. And that's the problem. And then he said, what I am is hopeful. And hopefulness means you're going to do the right thing, even though you don't know that it's necessarily going to turn out right. And then if you do the right thing, even though you don't know, and then you have a certain convergence of events which come together, and then real change can take place. And that's what we all have to do. And I think in these difficult times that we're all facing, that's important for us to incorporate into our spirits, this sense of hopefulness.
There were sow thistles 3 or 4 feet tall. They ate them off, and then I put these bales out there. And the year before, I'd done this a half a mile in. Well, we went to the States for a week. And the word in town was that I was put all those bales out there. I was going to the States for the winter. I'm just going to turn the cows loose. And they were wondered why I put them so far apart. So being a community service guy, I told them I put them that far apart so that the deer couldn't jump from one to the other. If you don't stir the pot, it burns on the bottom, and I find that they leave the neighbors alone a lot. They talk about me and leave them alone a lot now.
Well, it's easy for us to get enamored with the color pictures and the magazines and all of the propaganda and the stories that are put out there for us, and encouragement for us to go one direction or another. We sometimes forget that our basic responsibility in agriculture is to produce an abundance of economically available, nutritious, and safe food. Because again, everything a society does is dependent on you. So if I summarize, I would state that future historians may well look back upon our time and write not about how many pounds of pesticide we did or didn't apply, but about how willing we are to sacrifice our children, jeopardize future generations with this massive experiment that we call genetic engineering, that's based on failed promises and flawed science, just to benefit the bottom line of a commercial enterprise.
So we're going to talk about 4 or 5 things here that are basic principles, okay? Regardless of whether you're in rangeland or cropland or Canada or North Dakota or Missouri or Texas or Hawaii, okay? Some basic soil principles that we're going to talk about. The first one, manage more by disturbing less. Then diversity, feeding our soil livestock, keeping the soil covered, and integrating livestock. We're going to go through all of those here. All of us have had land that's a fraction of its organic matter our whole lives. Our fathers' lives, it was that way. And we just accepted that's what it was, okay? We don't have to accept that any longer. Every ecosystem in the world that has the best soils all came from what? They all came from an area that had grazers, that had herbivores, didn't we? All kinds. These happen to be the bison over at Phil's. Now, you know, there's a lot of theories on that. You know, some of them say they were in small family units, 50 or 60. You know, there's also accounts of millions in a herd traveling through an area, eating and trampling everything. You know, most likely it was both. Just different times of the year, different things that impacted them. That is the tool, the best tool that we're going to use to rebuild these soils is the tool that was used to build them in the first place. These are the 5 things we talked about. The building blocks of soil health. The 5 basic principles. The things that we try to integrate, whether you're talking about a crop field, whether you're talking about a pasture, no matter what you're talking about, these are the things we need to look at. We need to try to focus on. It's not going to do us any good to have all the soil in the world if we hurt our personal goals and our family relationships.
What I want to try and cover today is that the water security of our ranches, of our communities, of our states, counties, countries, and the whole world comes down to soil health, and that we're in a new time. It's a new chapter. We've never been here before, but we need to fix soil to achieve water security. Something is making those nutrients plant available. Carbon, putting carbon into the system is actually what does this. Remember, it feeds and houses, basically makes the lives better and possible of the microorganisms who produce acids and enzymes that basically melt rocks and make them plant available. So we're pumping carbon via this liquid carbon pathway deep into the soil where it's feeding and hosting microbes who are making rocks into plant available fertilizers. So it's pretty miraculous. Here's land that's been bare for decades. Single ripping, no seeding, no fertilizer. And the outcome was complete coverage, 100% covered ground with one rain event.
I want to say again, I really meant what I said. I've been to, I can't even count how many conferences I've been to, but it's been a lot. And there's absolutely no question this is the best I've been to. And my hat's off to you. Just keep up the outstanding work, and God bless all of you.
Thank you. God be with you all. Safe trip home, and we'll be keeping in contact with you, letting you know where we'll have the 2014 conference and when it'll be. Thank you much.